The ultimatum: the first alien ship appeared above Earth on a Tuesday morning, casting a shadow over half of North America. Captain Marcus Rivera stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the massive vessel position itself in orbit. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight with both wonder and dread. The ship resembled a crystalline flower, its petals shifting and rotating in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Within hours, every communication device on Earth received the same message. The voice that spoke was melodious, almost hypnotic, translated into every human language simultaneously. The being, calling itself Primarch Zellan of the Hegemony Coalition, explained their presence with the casual authority of someone who had done this countless times before. The Hegemony Coalition represented 82 civilized species across the galaxy. They had observed humanity's recent ventures into space, their primitive, faster-than-light experiments, their clumsy attempts at colonizing Mars. Now they had come to offer humanity its place in the galactic order. The terms were simple and absolute. 60% of Earth's resources would be harvested annually for redistribution across hegemony worlds. Human technology would be restricted to approved levels, with all military developments ceased immediately. Most importantly, humanity would provide 1 billion individuals for what they called cultural exchange programs, though the implications were clear enough. Director Elena Vasquez, read the terms from her office in the newly constructed Unity building in New York, where representatives from every nation had gathered since the arrival. She had spent 30 years working toward global cooperation, helping forge the Earth Alliance after the water wars of the 2040s. Now, faced with a threat from beyond the stars, humanity stood more united than ever before. Yet unity meant nothing if they were simply united in slavery. The debate lasted 3 days. Some argued for acceptance, pointing to the hegemony's obvious technological superiority. Their single ship could probably destroy Earth without effort. Others demanded resistance, refusing to bow to cosmic tyrants. In the end, the vote was closer than anyone expected, but the decision was made. Earth would negotiate, but it would not surrender. Admiral Chen Wu had been preparing for this possibility since humanity first detected signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. While politicians debated, he had quietly reorganized Earth's military forces, adapting strategies from thousands of years of human conflict for potential space warfare. The hegemony might have superior technology, but humans had something else. 10,000 years of finding creative ways to kill each other, recently unified into finding creative ways to defend themselves. The diplomatic mission launched 2 weeks after first contact. Ambassador Thomas Mitchell, a veteran negotiator who had helped end 3 civil wars, led the team. They approached the crystalline ship in humanity's most advanced vessel, a converted military cruiser renamed Olive Branch for the occasion. Mitchell carried with him Earth's counteroffer, a proposal for gradual integration, mutual exchange of knowledge, and respect for human sovereignty. The interior of the hegemony ship defied human understanding of physics. Corridors folded in on themselves, rooms existed in spaces that shouldn't fit, and gravity flowed in directions that made no sense. The humans were led to a chamber where representatives of 12 different species waited. Some were vaguely humanoid, others were shapes that hurt to perceive, and at least 2 seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Primarch Zellan dominated the room despite being one of the smaller beings present. Their species, the Ashanti, looked like living prisms, their bodies refracting light into rainbows that shifted with their emotions. Currently, those rainbows were a calm, condescending blue. Mitchell presented humanity's counteroffer with all the diplomatic skill he had accumulated over decades. He spoke of mutual benefit, of what humanity could offer beyond mere resources, of the value of diversity in thought and approach. The Primarch's response was swift and dismissive. The hegemony had encountered hundreds of young species like humanity. All believed themselves special, unique, deserving of special consideration. All eventually learned their place in the natural order of the galaxy. The terms were not negotiable. They never were. In 10,000 years of expansion, only 5 species had refused the hegemony's generous offer of protection and integration. None of those species existed anymore. Mitchell tried one final approach. He spoke of humanity's history, not hiding its darkness but explaining how that very darkness had forged something stronger. Humans had practiced warfare on each other for millennia, had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, and had always emerged more unified, more determined. They had learned from every conflict, adapted from every defeat, and turned their greatest weaknesses into strengths. If the hegemony forced humanity to fight, they would face not just another young species, but one that had been preparing for war since before they could write. The chamber fell silent. Several of the alien representatives exchanged what might have been glances. The Primarch's light shifted to a deeper blue, almost purple. When they spoke again, there was something new in their tone. Not respect exactly, but perhaps acknowledgement. They gave humanity 30 days to prepare for integration. If Earth's governments had not transmitted their acceptance by then, the hegemony fleet would arrive to enforce compliance. The pacification would be swift and thorough, minimizing suffering while maximizing efficiency. It was, the Primarch assured them, the kindest option available. As the olive branch departed, Mitchell noticed something odd. One of the alien representatives, a being that looked like living smoke contained in a vaguely humanoid form, had moved to what might have been a window. It seemed to be watching the human ship leave with what Mitchell could only interpret as curiosity, perhaps even concern. Back on Earth, the message was clear. Humanity had 30 days to prepare for war against a coalition that had conquered a quarter of the galaxy. Admiral Wu gathered his staff and began implementing Project Fortress, a defensive strategy that relied not on matching the enemy's technology, but on using humanity's home field advantage and their hard-won knowledge of asymmetric warfare. Every military base on Earth began producing weapons, not the energy beams and plasma cannons of science fiction, but kinetic weapons, electromagnetic pulses, and other tools that physics guaranteed would work regardless of technological advancement. Meanwhile, in laboratories across the planet, scientists worked around the clock analyzing every piece of data gathered from the hegemony ship. Dr. Sarah Parker, leading the effort from MIT, made a startling discovery. The hegemony's technology, while advanced, followed predictable patterns. They had been at peace for so long, their entire approach to conflict was based on overwhelming superiority rather than tactical innovation. They fought wars like they were mathematical equations. Input superior force, output victory. Humans had learned long ago that war was chaos, and in chaos, creativity could overcome any disadvantage. The world transformed in those 30 days. Old enemies shared military secrets. Corporations opened their research to competitors, and every human who could hold a tool contributed to the defense effort. Cities built bunkers, civilians trained in resistance tactics, and children learned to recognize alien ship signatures. Earth became a fortress, but more importantly, it became united in a way it never had been before. Director Vasquez stood in the Unity building on the final day, watching the countdown timer reach 0. No acceptance had been transmitted. Earth had made its choice. She thought about the Primarch's words, about the 5 species that had refused integration. None had survived, but then again, none of them had been human. As the first hegemony ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, Admiral Wu sent a single message to all Earth forces. They offered us peace on our knees. We choose war on our feet. Show them why humanity's greatest enemy has always been ourselves. Because nothing else in the universe is equipped for the job. The Reckoning. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 500 vessels arranged in a sphere around Earth. Each ship was a work of art, crystalline structures that sang in frequencies human ears couldn't hear, powered by energies humanity had only theorized about. They expected surrender. They received something else entirely. The first surprise came at Jupiter. The hegemony's advanced scouts, sleek vessels that could cross solar systems in hours, suddenly found themselves struggling to navigate. Humanity had seeded Jupiter's massive magnetosphere with millions of metallic particles, creating an electromagnetic storm that played havoc with the aliens' sophisticated sensors. 3 scout ships collided with Europa before they realized what was happening, their crews unable to comprehend why their perfect navigation systems had failed. Admiral Wu watched from the command center buried beneath Cheyenne Mountain. The first phase of Project Fortress was working. The hegemony relied on their technology being so far advanced that opposition was meaningless. But humans had learned something important in their brief encounter. The aliens' technology was too sophisticated. They had forgotten how to deal with simple problems, because they hadn't faced them in millennia. The main fleet proceeded more cautiously after losing the scouts. They approached Earth in a standard containment pattern that had worked on hundreds of worlds. Primarch Zelen commanded from the flagship, a massive city-sized vessel that could crack continents with its main weapon. The Primarch was troubled by the loss of the scouts but not concerned. Young species often managed one surprising move before being overwhelmed. The second surprise came at Mars. Humanity had spent 3 weeks turning their small colony into the largest kinetic weapons platform ever conceived. Using the planet's lower gravity and thin atmosphere, they had constructed massive railguns that could accelerate projectiles to percentages of light speed. When the hegemony fleet passed Mars's orbit, 10,000 tungsten rods launched simultaneously. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and plasma, were less effective against simple physics. Force equals mass times acceleration, and at relativistic speeds, even small objects became weapons of devastating power. 17 hegemony ships were destroyed outright. Dozens more suffered damage. The perfect formation scattered as captains who had never faced real opposition tried to respond to an attack they didn't understand. Energy weapons lashed out at Mars, turning the colony to glass, but the damage was done. The hegemony had lost more ships in 5 minutes than they had in the previous 1,000 years. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos led Earth's next response. While the aliens regrouped, she commanded a fleet of humanity's secret weapon, not advanced fighters or powerful warships, but simple drones. Thousands of them, each carrying nothing more than a nuclear warhead and a basic AI programmed with one instruction: ram the enemy. The hegemony's point defense systems, designed to track and eliminate sophisticated missiles, struggled with the chaotic swarm of primitive devices that didn't follow any logical attack pattern. The nuclear explosions didn't destroy many ships. The hegemony's hulls were too strong for that. But the electromagnetic pulses wreaked havoc on their sensors and communications. For crucial minutes, the alien fleet was blind and deaf, each ship isolated from the others. That's when humanity's real fleet attacked. Earth had hidden its true military force in the asteroid belt, powered down and disguised as space rocks. 300 ships crewed by hegemony standards but armed with weapons that worked on principles the aliens had abandoned as primitive eons ago. Railguns, nuclear missiles, and most importantly, boarding pods filled with humanity's finest soldiers. Captain Marcus Rivera, promoted from his ISS position to command the battleship Defiance, led the charge. His ship accelerated toward the hegemony flagship at speeds that should have torn it apart. Human engineers had solved that problem, the way they solved many problems, by accepting that some crew members wouldn't survive the maneuver and building the ship to function anyway. The boarding of the flagship would be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned to fear humanity. Sergeant John Kim led the first wave, 50 Marines in powered armor that looked primitive compared to hegemony technology, but was perfectly designed for one thing: close-quarters combat. The hegemony hadn't fought a ground war in 3 millennia. Their soldiers were ceremonial, their weapons designed for suppression, not killing. Humans had been perfecting the art of killing for their entire existence. The Marines moved through the flagship like a virus through a body. They didn't try to understand the impossible architecture or sophisticated systems. They simply destroyed everything that looked important and killed everything that moved. The Ashanti crew members, despite their advanced technology, had never experienced violence so personal, so visceral. They tried to respond with energy weapons that humans simply absorbed on shields designed specifically to counter them, based on data gathered during the diplomatic mission. Primarch Zelen watched their perfect order dissolve into chaos. The bridge crew, beings who had never known fear, began to panic as reports came in of humans advancing through the ship. These weren't soldiers as the hegemony understood them, disciplined, regulated, controlled. These were warriors, chaos given form, destruction with a purpose. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their soldiers or their crude but effective technology. It was their understanding of psychological warfare. Dr. Sarah, Parker had discovered something crucial in her. Analysis, the hegemony's peaceful existence, had left them psychologically unprepared for true conflict. So Earth broadcast everything: the boarding actions, the destruction of hegemony ships, the fear in alien eyes, all transmitted on every frequency to every hegemony vessel and, more importantly, to their homeworlds. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hegemony crews, watching their invincible fleet being torn apart by a species they had dismissed as primitive, began to doubt. Some ships retreated without orders, others surrendered. The perfect unity that had been the hegemony's strength became their weakness as panic spread faster than any virus. Admiral Wu launched the final phase of the operation. Every remaining human ship converged on the flagship. But instead of destroying it, they surrounded it, weapons powered but not firing. Then Wu himself sent a message, not just to the Primarch but to the entire galaxy. You came to our world offering peace through subjugation. We refused. You brought a fleet to force our submission. We destroyed it. But humanity doesn't seek to conquer or dominate. We seek to coexist. So we make you this offer. Leave our system, recognize our sovereignty, and we can begin again. Approach us as equals and you'll find no better friends. Approach us as conquerors and you'll find no worse enemy. The choice is yours. The bridge of the flagship was silent except for the distant sounds of human marines securing the lower decks. Primarch Zelen, their perfect form now flickering with colors no human had seen before, understood something that would reshape the galaxy. The hegemony had encountered something unprecedented, a species that had turned warfare into science, conflict into art, and somehow emerged from that crucible not as conquerors but as beings who genuinely wanted peace, just not at any price. The response came not from Zelen but from another voice, the smoke being Mitchell had noticed during the negotiations. The Hegemony Coalition accepts Earth's terms. We request permission to retrieve our survivors and discuss a new arrangement. As the Hegemony fleet limped away from Earth, leaving behind hundreds of destroyed ships and thousands of dead, the galaxy watched and understood. Humanity had not just won a battle. They had shattered a 10,000-year paradigm. The young species were no longer automatically prey. The peace of the galaxy would no longer be maintained through force alone. In the weeks that followed, delegations from dozens of species arrived at Earth, not with demands, but with genuine diplomatic overtures. Some came from species that had been forcibly integrated into the hegemony, seeing in humanity a chance for something different. Others came from independent powers, curious about these beings who had done the impossible. Director Vasquez found herself at the center of creating not just a new alliance, but a new way for species to interact. Admiral Wu was already planning joint training exercises with former hegemony forces, teaching them tactics they had forgotten over millennia of peace. Dr. Parker led scientific exchanges that benefited both sides, humanity gaining advanced technology while teaching the galaxy that sometimes the simple solution was the best one. Captain Rivera, promoted again for his actions during the battle, commanded Earth's first truly interstellar vessel, built with a combination of human ingenuity and alien technology. His mission was to visit the worlds of species who had been destroyed for refusing integration, to learn their stories and ensure they weren't forgotten. The galaxy had forced humanity to war, but in doing so they had unleashed something they hadn't expected. Not conquerors, not destroyers, but teachers. Humanity would teach the galaxy that peace through strength was different from peace through subjugation, that diversity of thought and approach made everyone stronger, and that sometimes the most primitive solution was the most effective one. As Earth's first ambassador to the reformed Galactic Council, Thomas Mitchell stood before representatives of 90 species and delivered humanity's first address. We tried peace and you forced us to war, but now that the war is over, we offer peace again. Not the peace of the conquered or the conqueror, but the peace of equals. We have much to learn from you, and perhaps you have something to learn from us. Together we can build something better than what came before. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had arrived.